It's Barry Donadio, who is a Republican delegate, so he's well involved in Republican politics. He's also served with the US forces in Afghanistan, and he's here now. Hi, Barry.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You've just been listening to Diane, the mother of a veteran. You've just been listening to Tobias, a former politician and a former veteran. What have you got to say to them?
Well, first, thank you for their service, and thank you for serving NATO. Thank you for helping the United States of America. I agree with them. I feel their pain. I was a soldier. I served in multiple Middle Eastern war zones. My grandfather served side by side with forces from the United Kingdom in World War II. I was always benefited by having forces of the United Kingdom nearby, or if necessary, to assist. They were there anywhere I was. The front line of all these Middle Eastern war zones are everywhere. There's no established trench that, the Taliban are on one side and we're on the other. The front line is everywhere. So there's really no back.
In which case, how could Donald Trump have got this so wrong?
Yeah, I sum it up as a gaffe. And quite frankly, I thought he was talking about Danish forces. I originally heard the video that says, I think he's talking about the Danish. In no way did I think he was meaning the UK, because quite frankly, the UK is always side by side with the United States. And I will tell you, and I don't know if this brings comfort to anybody listening, but when I was a soldier, I never really paid attention to what politicians or a president said. I paid attention. I cared about what my teammates thought. And I look at myself as a brother in arms to the lady's son there, as well as the other gentleman. And I say they're good. I saw with my eyes multiple Middle Eastern war zones, what they had done side by side with U.S. forces. There is no greater ally.
And that may be true. That may be true. Tobias, come back.
Yeah, firstly, can I say thank you, a Republican that's actually willing to criticize Donald Trump. It's not so frequent that we hear that. There is a fear, if you like, of criticizing the American president. So powerful has he become. But just on the point of the Danish, I lost my brother to terrorism, and I did frequent visits to Afghanistan to understand what we were doing to tackle extremism. And I missed my lift back from Helmand, and I had to go back on a Danish cargo plane. And on board, when I got on board, were 20 caskets with the Danish flag covered over them. And I thought of that today, along with the loss of the British personnel too. So the Danish have been very brave. And it's not just the Danish and the British, it's right across NATO. Sacrifices were made because we stood up when the call was made. Please come and help America in their moment of need. And that is what's missing here. But the real icing on the cake is, why did we hand this country back to the very insurgents we went into defeat? It was Donald Trump signing a deal with the Taliban back in 2020. So there's a bigger picture here which Donald Trump is deliberately missing. He's playing this. You say it's a gaffe. I put it to you respectfully. I think this is about energizing his base to say NATO isn't very good. America's got to go it alone. That's why we need to get into Greenland.
Barry, respond to that, then we'll speak to some 5 Live listeners.
I would say, maybe people that don't know better, people that aren't soldiers would buy into that. Anybody that knows what they're talking about, like the three of your guests here, they know that's just it's just wrong. It's incorrect. And have presidents said, I've worked at the White House. The presidents say things that are incorrect all the time if you really would have fact-checked it. They don't do it on purpose every time. Yeah, and in his case, I'm not sure what he meant. But overall, I could tell you what I saw with my own eyes. The Brits were there. And September 11th, 2001, I was in New York, not necessarily at the towers, but I was in the military at the time. We didn't think we were going to live past that day. Guess what planes were in the air above the United States shortly after? NATO. It was NATO. So I remember that.
But Barry, is this a kind of one-off bit of misinformation, misunderstanding, offensive language from Donald Trump? Or does it reveal a sort of way of thinking that some people in America and in the Trump administration have about their allies, that they think, oh yeah, they talk a good game, but they don't really. This is actually genuinely what this is. Even worse than it just being a gaffe. It's what they actually think.
I sum it all up, and I don't mean to cut you off. I sum it all up as to President Trump's disappointment in NATO not investing more money in defense. However, I agree with him there. NATO needs to invest a heck of a lot more money in self-defense. If I were Estonia or Lithuania right now, I would not be patting myself on the back saying, oh, you know, we're working towards 5% of our GDP on self-defense. Listen, you need to have 10%, and I'm not even kidding. You have Russia on their doorstep. So the patting on the back for only 5% of the GDP is highly, and I'm sure the soldiers in your listeners will agree with that. We got to get serious about NATO. There needs to be huge, massive investment.
Yeah, but Trump wasn't making just the point about the finances. He was insinuating that all these countries are full of cowards.
No, I think for the president, I think he just lumps that all into the economic. That's my take. You know, somebody else might have another take on it, and that's fine.
Ben's travelled very, very extensively since he was injured in America, both with charities and his own right. And that is not what he has seen from the American people. He's been treated like a hero, as have your own veterans. What we have seen, what he has found in America, is that he's been treated like he sees himself as a great ally to America, and the people's views don't seem to ally with Trump's view.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you were to stop any American on the side of the road here, I'm right outside of Washington, and they met your son, they would treat him exactly the same as a U.S. veteran. I mean, we are very, very extremely close allies, yeah, and we would appreciate that. I certainly appreciate it. I can proudly speak for my grandfather, who fought in the war, was in England, crossed into Normandy. I know that he would appreciate it too. So just because the president says one thing that's incorrect doesn't mean an entire country believes something completely different. So I think most Americans, they're still in the frame of mind that, you know, our greatest ally is the United Kingdom. Of course, France is right up there. All of Europe, really, and even the Danes. You know, nobody here has a problem with the Danish.
Barry, can you imagine a world where Donald Trump says something that sounds like sorry for this?
He might. You know, he's a compassionate man. I've been around him. I've seen his demeanor. He just was on a stage at Davos explaining how much he loves Europe and how much he loves the European people. He brought up that his ethnic background is in fact European. He's Scottish. So I think that's a good sign, and I think that's a humanization of who he really is. And I say give him a couple of days, and maybe you will.
Okay.
It's not beneath him.
And,
really.
and Tobias, you've spent a lot of time with U.S. military top brass. Can you imagine them going into the Oval Office and saying, "Mr. President, with respect, but with gritted teeth, you've got to reverse on this"?
Well, I'm actually a dual national. I was born in America, and I know for a fact that many of the senior four-star generals that were involved in Afghanistan are absolutely livid by this, and they're embarrassed by this, and they will be publicly speaking about this. You will see this shortly. It goes back to my point, and you know, I'm pleased that Barry is speaking out here. But who does tell the president when he gets it wrong? And he has got it wrong here in a major way. You're absolutely right to say that we're under threat in Europe, but what is that threat? It's Russia, and if America wants to help, they could actually lean in just a little bit more. You know, they've stopped their intelligence sharing with Ukraine. They've paused some of their weapons deliveries and so forth. And yet you use
They're
Russia
the ones who are avoiding the front line, in other words.
Let me finish. But Trump is now using Russia as the reason why he wants Greenland. If you want to push Russia back, if you want to keep Russia weak, then you put the fire out in Ukraine. That's what you do. And if we have America supporting the rest of NATO to do so, we can do that. This war has rumbled on too long, but it's partly because of procrastination, delay, and risk averseness in standing up to Putin. And that's, I'm afraid, because of America has been dithering on this.
Okay, Tobias, Diane, and Barry, thank you very much for joining us on 5 Live tonight. Let's speak
Thank you.
Thank you. No, let's speak now to some people who've called in tonight.